December the 11th, 1978. John F. Kennedy International Airport, New York City. A Lufthansa cargo vault begins another routine overnight shift. Pallets of cash and valuables are stacked behind reinforced doors. Employees move between loading bays without realizing that several men are already putting the final pieces of a carefully planned robbery into motion. The airport is one of the busiest in the world. Every day, millions of dollars in international currency pass through its cargo terminals. Most shipments arrive quietly. They are counted, documented, and stored before continuing to banks across the United States. The system depends on schedules, paperwork, and trust. On that December night, one weak link is enough to threaten all three. Months earlier, a cargo employee named Lewis Warner had fallen into serious financial trouble. Gambling debts mounted faster than he could repay them. Desperate for money, Warner revealed confidential details about Lufthansa's cash handling procedures to associates connected with New York's Lucchese crime family. The information appeared ordinary at first. Shift schedules, security routines, employee entrances, and the timing of international cash deliveries. Together, those details created something far more valuable than cash itself. They created opportunity. The Lucchese family already had a reputation for organized theft and racketeering throughout New York. Experienced criminals understood that successful robberies rarely depended on force alone. Information often mattered more than weapons. A detailed floor plan could be worth more than a truck filled with equipment. A trusted insider could eliminate weeks of surveillance. Investigators would later believe that James Burke became the central organizer of the operation. Known by the nickname Jimmy Burke, he had spent years building a reputation as a disciplined criminal capable of planning complex robberies without attracting unnecessary attention. Burke preferred preparation over improvisation. Every participant received a specific role. Every movement followed a schedule. Every unnecessary risk increased the chance of failure. The target was extraordinary. Lufthansa regularly stored large amounts of foreign currency, arriving from Germany before distribution across financial institutions in the United States. During the holiday season, those amounts became even larger. Christmas travel increased international cash movement. Currency exchanges handled higher volumes. The vault at JFK temporarily held millions of dollars waiting to enter circulation. The plan depended on timing. The robbers would strike when cash reserves were at their highest and staffing remained relatively limited during overnight hours. They also intended to finish quickly enough that police would have little chance to respond before they disappeared into New York's traffic. Late on December the 11th, vehicles quietly approached the cargo terminal. The men inside avoided drawing attention. They wore ordinary clothing rather than disguises that might immediately raise suspicion. Their weapons remained hidden until the final moments. From the outside, nothing suggested that one of the largest cash robberies in American history was only minutes away. Inside the building, employees continued normal routines. Paperwork moved across desks. Forklifts transported shipments through storage areas. Security personnel followed familiar procedures that had become almost automatic after years of repetition. Routine often creates confidence. Confidence sometimes creates vulnerability. Shortly after entering the terminal, the robbers revealed their weapons and immediately took control. The operation moved with remarkable speed. Employees were ordered to remain calm and cooperate. The instructions were direct and deliberate. Nobody was harmed during the takeover because the robbers understood that violence would only increase panic and attract attention. Workers were gathered together and restrained. Security alarms remained silent because the criminals acted before anyone could trigger them. Telephone access was controlled. Every minute followed the timeline established long before anyone entered the building. Witnesses later described the robbers as calm rather than reckless. Their confidence suggested extensive preparation. They knew exactly where to go. They knew which employees possessed access to secure areas. They knew which doors led toward the currency vault. Within minutes, vault employees unlocked restricted storage areas under threat. Large containers filled with cash became accessible. Bags of foreign currency disappeared into waiting vehicles outside the terminal. Jewelry shipments intended for commercial distribution were also taken. The total value continued climbing as more containers left the building. By the time the robbery ended, approximately $6 million had been stolen. More than $5 million consisted of cash. The remaining value came from jewelry and other valuables stored alongside the currency. Adjusted for inflation, the theft would equal tens of millions of dollars today. The robbers gave employees one final instruction before leaving. Nobody was to contact police immediately. Everyone was told to wait before reporting the crime. The delay, even if only brief, created precious time for the escape. Then the vehicles disappeared into the darkness surrounding the airport. When employees finally alerted authorities, police responded to a crime scene unlike anything they had previously encountered. There were no dramatic shootouts, no damaged vault doors, no signs of chaotic violence. Instead, investigators found evidence of a robbery executed with military precision. Detectives immediately realized this had not been an ordinary airport theft. Someone possessed inside knowledge. Someone understood Lufthansa's procedures in extraordinary detail. Without that information, reaching the vault so efficiently would have been almost impossible. Within hours, federal investigators joined local law enforcement. The scale of the robbery demanded national attention. News organizations across the United States reported that millions of dollars had vanished almost overnight. Headlines described the theft as one of the boldest robberies ever committed on American soil. But while investigators searched for fingerprints, interviewed witnesses, and reconstructed timelines, the stolen money was already beginning to scatter across New York. The greatest challenge was no longer finding the cash. It was finding the men who had planned where every dollar would go. By sunrise on December 12, 1978, investigators were confronting an uncomfortable reality. One of the largest cash robberies in American history had been completed in less than 90 minutes. The thieves had entered a secured cargo facility, emptied a vault holding millions of dollars, and disappeared without firing a single shot. Every passing hour made the chances of recovering the money smaller. The Federal Bureau of Investigation quickly assumed a leading role in the investigation. Agents began reconstructing every minute of the robbery. They interviewed airport employees, examined entry points, collected fingerprints, and reviewed security procedures. What stood out immediately was not what the robbers had done, but what they had ignored. They never wandered through the terminal searching for valuables. They walked directly toward the money. That level of confidence pointed toward inside information. Attention soon focused on Lufthansa employees with access to the cargo operation. Investigators reviewed financial records, questioned supervisors, and examined personal connections. It was during this process that Louis Werner's name began appearing repeatedly. Werner worked within the cargo terminal and knew exactly how international currency shipments were handled. More importantly, he had recently accumulated significant gambling debts. Financial pressure alone did not prove involvement, but it made Werner impossible to ignore. While investigators searched for insiders, another story unfolded within New York's organized crime circles. Jimmy Burke understood that stealing the money had been only half the operation. Spending it safely would be much harder. Large sums of cash create problems. Expensive cars, luxury homes, and sudden purchases attract attention. Banks report unusual deposits. Friends become curious. Informants notice changes in lifestyle. Burke reportedly warned everyone involved to avoid flashy spending for several months. The money needed to disappear quietly into legitimate businesses, gambling operations, and smaller transactions over time. Some members of the crew ignored those instructions almost immediately. Only days after the robbery, reports began circulating that several associates had purchased expensive vehicles, jewelry, and luxury clothing. New Cadillacs appeared in neighborhoods where modest sedans had been parked only weeks earlier. Nightclubs welcomed customers carrying unusually large amounts of cash. The very success of the robbery created temptation that discipline could. For Burke, that represented a dangerous mistake. According to investigators and later testimony from organized crime insiders, Burke believed loose spending increased the risk that law enforcement would trace the robbery back to his crew. Every unnecessary purchase threatened everyone involved. Then another pattern emerged. People connected to the robbery began disappearing. One associate was found murdered inside a parked vehicle. Another vanished before investigators could question him. Others were discovered weeks later under suspicious circumstances. In several cases, authorities believed the killings were intended to eliminate witnesses before anyone considered cooperating with police. Because many of these deaths occurred within the criminal underworld, proving direct connections to the Lufthansa robbery became extremely difficult. Witnesses refused to speak. Physical evidence remained scarce. Fear often replaced testimony. As bodies accumulated, investigators became increasingly convinced that someone was systematically reducing the number of people who knew how the robbery had unfolded. Jimmy Burke himself was never charged with carrying out the Lufthansa robbery. Prosecutors lacked enough direct evidence to place him inside the cargo terminal that night. But many investigators believed he had organized the operation from the beginning. The case became one of patience rather than speed. Agents tracked financial records. They monitored known organized crime figures. Informants quietly reported conversations taking place inside bars, restaurants, and social clubs throughout New York. Every small detail was documented, even when it seemed insignificant. Months passed. The stolen money continued disappearing into the criminal economy. Despite recovering small amounts of currency and locating scattered evidence, authorities never found the vast majority of the cash. Meanwhile, Lewis Warner's situation deteriorated. Investigators uncovered inconsistencies in his statements about the days leading up to the robbery. Financial records revealed mounting debts that matched the timeline prosecutors had been studying. Witnesses connected Warner to individuals associated with organized crime. The evidence remained largely circumstantial at first. Then additional testimony strengthened the government's case. Federal prosecutors eventually charged Warner with helping provide inside information that allowed the robbery to occur. During trial, the government argued that his knowledge of cargo operations had been essential to the planning process. Without that information, navigating the secure facility so efficiently would have been nearly impossible. Warner maintained that he had not participated directly in the robbery itself. The jury reached a different conclusion. He was convicted for his role in the conspiracy and sentenced to prison. Yet, even with Warner's conviction, the central mystery remained unanswered. Where had the money gone? Investigators estimated that millions of dollars had already been divided among numerous participants before authorities even understood the full scale of the operation. Cash can travel quickly. Once exchanged, laundered, or spent, tracing individual bills becomes almost impossible. Federal agents continued pursuing leads for years. Some tips came from anonymous callers. Others came from confidential informants hoping to reduce their own criminal sentences. Many proved unreliable. Others arrived too late. The Lufthansa robbery slowly transformed from an active crime scene into one of America's most famous unsolved financial investigations. Its influence extended beyond law enforcement. Writers, journalists, and filmmakers became fascinated by the extraordinary planning behind the theft and the deadly aftermath that followed. The robbery entered popular culture as a symbol of organized crime at its most disciplined and its most ruthless. Behind the headlines, investigators continued chasing fragments of evidence that never quite fit together. The money had vanished, the witnesses were disappearing, and the people who knew the complete story were becoming fewer every year. Years turned into decades, yet the Lufthansa heist refused to fade from public memory. Every major breakthrough seemed to reveal another layer of the story without ever solving the central mystery. The investigation had identified an insider, linked several organized crime figures to the planning, and uncovered a trail of suspicious deaths. But the millions of stolen dollars remained largely unrecovered. For the FBI, the case became a lesson in how difficult it is to investigate organized crime when fear keeps witnesses silent. Physical evidence could only go so far. The people who truly understood what had happened were either unwilling to cooperate, imprisoned on unrelated charges, or no longer alive. Jimmy Burke continued operating within New York's criminal underworld after the robbery. Although investigators strongly believed he had orchestrated the Lufthansa heist, they could never gather enough direct evidence to charge him for the crime itself. Instead, Burke was eventually convicted for an unrelated murder and sentenced to life in prison. He died behind bars in 1996, taking whatever knowledge he possessed about the robbery with him. Other suspected participants met similar fates. Some disappeared without explanation. Others were murdered before investigators could question them. A few spent years in prison for unrelated offenses, but never admitted their involvement in the heist. As time passed, the number of people capable of revealing the complete story steadily declined. Lewis Warner remained the only Lufthansa employee convicted for helping make the robbery possible. His gambling debts had opened the door to one of the most expensive thefts in American history. Without his inside information, investigators believed the robbers would never have reached the vault with such speed and precision. The money itself became almost impossible to trace. Unlike gold or artwork, cash leaves few permanent records. Once divided among dozens of people, exchanged through illegal businesses, or spent over many years, individual bills become anonymous. Investigators recovered only a small fraction of the stolen currency. The overwhelming majority simply vanished into the underground economy. The Lufthansa robbery also changed airport security. Cargo terminals across the United States reviewed their procedures. Companies introduced stricter employee background checks, improved access controls, and strengthened oversight of high-value shipments. Security experts concluded that the greatest weakness had not been the vault or the locks. It had been the insider who knew exactly how the system worked. The robbery also captured Hollywood's attention. In 1990, director Martin Scorsese released the film Goodfellas, based on the life of mob associate Henry Hill. One of the film's most memorable sequences portrays the aftermath of the Lufthansa heist, showing how greed and panic led to the deaths of several participants. Although dramatized for cinema, the scenes were inspired by the real investigation and introduced millions of viewers to the story behind the robbery. Even today, criminal investigators study the Lufthansa heist as an example of meticulous planning mixed with catastrophic human error. The The robbery itself was executed with remarkable discipline. The aftermath was not. The temptation to spend stolen money, combined with efforts to silence potential witnesses, ultimately exposed the criminal network to years of investigation. Despite thousands of hours of investigative work, countless interviews, and decades of analysis, many questions remain unanswered. How much of the stolen money was actually divided among the crew? Who received the largest share? How much was secretly hidden before investigators even knew where to look? Those answers may never be known. Many of the people capable of explaining the full operation are gone. Documents have been lost. Memories have faded. The remaining evidence tells only part of the story. What began on a cold December night at John F. Kennedy International Airport became more than a robbery. It became a symbol of organized crime at its most calculated, demonstrating how careful planning could overcome sophisticated security, while also proving that greed often destroys even the most successful criminal enterprise. More than 4 decades later, the Lufthansa Heist still stands among the greatest unsolved robberies in American history, not because investigators failed to understand how it happened, but because they never recovered what mattered most. The missing millions were never found.